G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Patrick Noel Daly from Icon Global Innovations based in Newfoundland, Canada. Thanks for your time today, Patrick.
Hey, Roy. It's good to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. We both started using the Podmatch platform this year and connected on there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how we connected. I started getting into podcasts maybe about a year ago. Kind of took the foot off the gas a little bit on the executive front and decided I was going to help out by mentoring, advising, and people said to me, why don't you do a couple of podcasts and see how it goes? So that's how we connected in Podmatch, and good to be here today to chat with yourself and give hopefully some advice that your listeners can get benefit from.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. And for the audience, I think you're literally out in the wilderness at the moment, aren't you?
I'm out in the wilds, man. It's a great place, Newfoundland in Canada. It's a really nice part of the world. I started traveling, let's say, on a more leisure, less work front a couple of years ago, and I landed here, and it's a great spot. People are really hospitable, welcoming. And scenery is amazing, so it's a good part of the world. Also fairly close.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Sure. Basically what we do is we help or we invent products that are solutions for the market, for all markets right across. It's kind of sector agnostic. I develop, and I've been around medical, healthcare, and aerospace, IT for quite a while. My first business, well, actually going right back, my first business was selling burgers and fries on the beach in Southern Ireland on my summer holidays. I was 14 years old, and then I went into, I developed a search engine around 97. I was 1 year before Google, and that was, I guess, the equivalent of a kind of an auto trader. It was called AutoLink, so we were a search engine for cars, and I should have held on to that one. I sold it after a very short while. And then I went into medical and healthcare, and we were medical support services or specialized kind of sleep pressure ulcers for long-term bedridden patients. So that worked, and I scaled that up. I went from myself up to 50 people very quickly, ranked number one in our space, got a lot of mileage. Along the way in the first couple of startups, though, I made a lot of mistakes because I was flying by the seat of my pants. I was learning as I go. And then I went into licensing technologies. And in the last few years, I decided to write a book called Just Startup, which is a guide to building startups. Because I've seen the good things and I've seen the bad things, and I've made the good decisions and made the bad decisions over the years, 20 plus years. And I decided I'd share that kind of knowledge and learning to help people to avoid the pitfalls. So that's what the book is about. It's called Just Startup, and it's a guide to building startups.
We'll link through to that in the show notes. And you mentioned before we hit record, it's about 70 pages. So it's a nice short book with all your life lessons in business.
Completely. Because I remember when I was busy, and I'm busy now because we're licensing technologies and I'm looking at interest, and we develop products. We've got a team around the world, and we try to develop the right products at the right time. But the book itself, when I wrote it, I said, I remember when I was super busy, I just wanted something that I could read quickly and get the nuggets of advice very, very instantly. So this book is very short, but it goes right through from concept, ideation to exit of the business, every aspect of business. So if you're going to a meeting and if you're a bit unsure, uncertain about what you're going to be talking about, read a couple of pages and get your mind set up for it.
And how did you start out? Maybe you've covered your business journey to date. Maybe the medical mattress business you had. So where is that? Did you exit that?
Yeah, I exited that I kept a piece of it. We had probably 4 divisions in that business. There was manufacturing, marketing, innovation, and R&D. And R&D were combined. So I guess 3 pieces. The manufacturing part we weren't too good at. We were making the product, we were doing the job properly, we were ticking all the boxes. It was fully certified and fully registered and so on as a medical device. And that in itself is a struggle, because you've got to go through a year or two, and that's understandable because it's a medical product. The other parts were R&D, innovation, and marketing, and the manufacturing part. So that was kind of hived off to somebody else. That was like given to people who were very good at manufacturing. So we subcontracted that out, and I kept the R&D, innovation, marketing part, because that was, I guess, the genesis then of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Building ideas, bringing products to fruition, launching them, getting them out there, and either selling them through resellers or putting them through a licensing model.
Yep. Great. And what you just going back to your first real business, apart from selling burgers and fries on the beach. So in 1997, when you started up that website, that engine for selling cars, how old were you then?
Wow, that's a good question. Early 20s, I think. It was really early. And I had gone to Germany, lived in Germany for a couple of years, 2 years, and came back, and I think I was 20. And I said, you know what, I'm going to just give this a go. I'm going to try this out. And that was the first formal business. The timing of it was very good in one sense, but it was probably a little bit ahead of the curve, because I would go to customers who were, mainly kind of premium to mid-level car dealerships. And I would say, this is what I'm going to do. And they would use traditional methods and kind of standard sales and marketing strategies. And I said, no, we got to make this easy. If somebody wants whatever brand and they want to pay like 10 grand and they want a silver or blue, then you should be able to put in search items and get a short list. And of the legwork and the driving and all of the to and fro and all that, and just go and get your shortlist, get your contact name, and go in and buy the car. So that's how it started. I started from a bedroom, literally. This was a kind of a sideshow, because I was working as a product manager from the 7 to kind of 4. Then from 4, we'll say 4:30 to 7, 6:30 sometimes, I was selling this service and building that business. And then I was going to college studying business, law, and psychology by night. So I did that for a while. Then I got an offer for the business, and it just seemed like, a logical decision at the time.
Yep.
And it might, when I look back at it now, people say to me, well, why didn't you just keep that search engine business? If you look at Google, where it is now, if you look at all the big, huge, companies that are out there, I just say, look, I made a decision based on the information that I had at that time. So we shouldn't beat ourselves. I think entrepreneurs, sometimes we look at what decisions we make in hindsight and we go, shit, why didn't I keep that? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I go left? Why didn't I go right? You can't do that. You just make a decision based on the information that you've got, and then hit the gas on the next one and drive on.
Exactly. You got 20/20 vision in hindsight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so with that business, did you build up any team members, or was just you running that business until you sold?
There was probably about 3 people around. I was doing the sales and kind of promotion job primarily.
Yep.
Then there was back office people running the day-to-day. There was a guy, a very good software engineer, looking after the software side. And I've always kept my businesses to least number needed, as far as people are concerned. So, and make people shareholders, give them a piece of the pie.
Yep.
And that gives them an interest to see the business succeed.
Yeah. Do you have any other numbers you want to share to illustrate the growth of any of those businesses?
Businesses are concerned, they were never super big. They were never going to be, they could have been big, but that would have meant that I'd have had to go through the venture capital routes and scale them up. That's all good, but again, it's timing. Probably the one that I would, it's actually 2 or 3 years ago. I have a product that I licensed, that I developed for a spin out of the medical mattress product. And that's called SimCare. It's kind of a mattress topper for hospitals. And I designed it so that it's really easy to disinfect and clean between patients. And then COVID came around. So that's created a strong demand for the product. we're in the middle of a kind of a funding round at this stage, because I think this is the one that probably has the greatest potential, because I looked at this whole sleep surface area, and people have said to me before, like, why don't you just get into the IT space again, or why don't you go tech again, go software, SaaS? And I'm saying, well, like, I'm very kind of traditional when I look at a product that people need every day. I was actually asked the question one night when I was out giving a presentation, and I was talking about sleep surfaces, going from medical, which we've adapted the medical version now for home and hotel and anywhere somebody needs to sleep. So somebody said, well, what's your potential market? What's your TAM, your total addressable market? And I said, 7.8 billion people. We all need to sleep.
We do.
So if I take that alone, it's worth my while to get my ass off the seat and go build this, you know? So that's what I'm doing at the moment. And I'm enjoying it.
That's great. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Oh, that's a really good question. Probably after the first completion, or let's call it acquisition of what you create, because you feel that completion factor, you know, you right up from, you're an entrepreneur as well, Troy, you'll understand this, you know, from the point to the point that you either sell it or make significant value or turn it into something that has a major contribution to society. You're always winging it, you know, you're always kind of looking and saying, you know, shit, is this going to actually fly?
Yep.
And even though you're doing well and you're hitting the milestones, you're hitting the targets, you still feel, is this going to complete? But when somebody comes up to you and says, look, I like what you do, I've liked what you've done, I like the technology, I like the product, whatever it is, I'm going to give you a check for it. That's when you know you've done your job. And I think probably I've done that a few times, and I'm lucky enough to be able to say that. And that could be, by the way, that may not be a check as an acquisition. That could be a license deal.
Yeah.
Somebody could come up and say, I love that technology. You know, it fits our range. You've got your intellectual property in order. You've got your technology sorted. You've done the heavy lifting at the beginning. So I'm happy to license the technology. So what we're actually doing now with SimCare, which is the port, the topper that I was talking about.
Yep.
And there's also a cushion attached to that. So we're making a version called Cushy, which is like for anybody who wants to sit at a game, who wants to, you know, basically needs a portable, functional, proven seat surface. So all that, when you get that acknowledgement, and when you get that confirmation or rubber stamp, that gives you a feeling of like satisfaction. It's a completion.
What does success look like to you?
Being able to achieve what you set out to achieve, even though you may have to take different roads, because life is a series of crossroads, right?
Yep.
We come up to crossroads and we go, okay, I've gotten to here, left, right, straight forward. You never go back. You know, you're there for a reason. So my success factor is always looking and saying, have I achieved what I wanted to achieve? Is it what I wanted to achieve? If not, why not? If yes, above that, great, job done. It's pretty much about achievement, not necessarily about the quantum of financial return, even though that's necessary from a business perspective, but from a personal perspective, it's about achievement.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Ear to the ground. Keep your finger on the pulse. Keep an eye on your competition. Keep an eye on your market. Speak directly to your customers. Ask them the hard questions. Because if you lose touch with your customer, you've lost touch with your business effectively, because they're the ones that are giving you their money for your product or service. Yep. So you've got to keep that finger on the pulse with your customer base.
And how did you fund the businesses?
Most of them are self-funded. At the very beginning, I started with crumbs, man. You know, I just had to wing it. And as I said, that was both in financial and operational and learning perspective. Somebody said to me one day, who was your best investor? And I said, my customer. Because they gave me sales. So, for example, you know, if I had a supplier that was charging me, you know, 50% pro forma advance payment, I would go to my customer and say, hey, you know, if you like my product that much, I'm going to have to get 50% in advance. So I was kind of like matching those two. So it was a self-funding model, as well as putting every aspect of what I could earn into it as well, because I always kept kind of a side hustle, which could be a job. It's funny because when you're in the job, I guess as an entrepreneur, you see the job as a bit of a side hustle.
Yeah, not the other way around.
Not the other way around. You're not supposed to be there like, okay, the job is the priority. Job is, you got to do your job. You got to get the results. You got to get mark that, tick that box. But at the same time, the output of or the income that you're getting from that job is for your startup. In my experience, that doesn't always work. It depends on your startup. You know, if I had a startup that needed significant capital investment, then I'm going to go to external investors and I'm going to seek that funding round. That's what we're doing at the moment with SimCare, because I think it has such strong potential that we need to be able to fund it properly. And the biggest mistake that I think can be made in a startup is underfunding.
Yeah.
If you see potential, you got to fuel the tanks. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. So this will be the first time you've taken investors on in any business, apart from giving some shares to team members?
I would have had small investors and side investors that would have been kind of more complementary advisors, as opposed to like investors, big checks on the table. So this will probably be the one that needs greatest amount of fuel in the tank to get it scaled, because of the significance of the market, the size.
If you were a startup today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Frankly, I would probably spread it out over a few industries. I'd look at, you see, there's a great thing about that as well, and that's risk management. So if you've got like 4 industries that you think are on the rise, on the upward curve, and if you invest, let's say you have, I don't know, 4 million, yeah, and you put $1 million in each into those businesses. One goes superhero, 2 are relatively mediocre, they might be break even or profit making, one could be a complete failure. You're still making money at the end of the day. So it's kind of like a VC mentality. It's a venture capital mentality.
Yep.
The old Irish saying, where I was born and raised, is never put all your eggs in one basket. You know, so and I think that's probably a global saying. But
as opposed to Warren Buffett, who says, "Put all your eggs in one basket and watch it like a hawk."
That's a good way to go. Yeah, absolutely. If you got to do that, you're right. You know, that needs to be watched, and you need to have like a circle drawn around it. You need to know where you're at. You need to know where you're strong. You need to know literally do a SWOT analysis versus competitors. Why are you so unique? What's your USP? Let me rephrase that. I did a podcast. My first podcast was in Chicago about a year and a half ago. And somebody said, what do you think of USP? And I said, I don't think there's a USP unless you're really, really rare. I think there's a DSP, a different selling point.
Yeah.
Why are you different from your competition?
Yep.
Like if you go out and say, yeah, we're completely unique, and you have got a seasoned buyer across the table, they're going to say,
that's bullshit.
There was a guy in here an hour ago, and he had something really, really close, if not the same as what you're offering. So like to say you're DSP and to say you have a DSP is probably more credible, and that'll get you more credibility.
Yep. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
People said, I was asked a question about what's the fundamental input, or what's the fundamental ingredient in success of earlier stage businesses or growth businesses or scale-ups. Which product? And I said, it's not the product, it's the people.
Yeah.
You know, you can have a relatively mediocre product with excellent people, and you'll do really well. If you have an excellent product
and
with
shit people,
not such excellent people, it's going to be an uphill struggle, and you're never going to actually kind of get in there and win. Because if you look at business and competition, business and particularly startup as a kind of a game, you know, we're on the pitch and we got to fight hard to win. And when you're up against strong competition who have hefty balance sheets with lots and lots of money, typically, then you've got to be very tactical and nimble and creative. Separate yourself from that bunch. So yeah, that's social as well.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Probably, I would say it's about, a lot of it's actually about marketing. You know, how do you present your message? People confuse sometimes. This is an age-old issue, and it's been talked about a million times. But is marketing the same as sales, or how do you separate marketing and sales? It's very clear for me. Marketing is about getting the message across to people that you've got value to give them. Sales is about the transaction part, or actually selling. If you can add value in marketing, then you drive your sales machine. And to answer your question, sales is the fundamental need of any business. If you don't have sales, you don't have food. It's as simple as that. You know, you've got an idea, you don't have a business.
No.
Get sales as quickly as possible with good customers to not just give you their purchase orders or whatever and their payments, but also loyalty. And that's your job as a salesperson, as a sales entity, as a company. You got to keep your customers and look after your customers and make sure they're getting value from what you have to offer.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth? Sorry, on the fast growth, didn't you, before we hit record, you said you pretty much went from 1 to 50 team members in that business in about a year, didn't you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fucking hard.
It's fucking terrible. It was like tough. It was an uphill climb. It's like a very, very high stress environment. But I guess it's a mindset thing again, you know. When I get into high stress, I kind of take it a little bit. I calm down.
Yeah, right.
I look at it and say, how do we build this? Getting people, getting systems in place, making sure the shit doesn't hit the fan.
Yep.
And if it does, you fix it as quickly as possible, and you're as upfront as possible with everybody.
Yeah.
Communication is the key. Being able to not just run into a burrow or not stick your head in the sand.
Yeah.
You need to be able to just go, here it is. This is where we're at. This is how we're going to get out of it. And this is what we're going to do to your own team, first of all.
Yep.
And then, and to the people that are your stakeholders. And at the same time, if necessary, and if the customer, thankfully it's never happened to me, but I know from experience in other situations and advising and mentoring startups now, I've seen it, where if the shit does hit the fan, they need, and my advice to them is get on the phone immediately.
Yep.
If it's going to affect the customer, you need to tell people. Communication is key. But thankfully, I've had a fairly easy run in that regard because preparation was crucial for me.
Yep.
And a post that I put on LinkedIn recently was, when you're business planning or when you're starting up your business and you're planning for startup, put as much time as you possibly can into your roadmap defined. Know what and do a case, expected case, worst case scenario.
Yep.
And hope for the best and plan for the worst, you know? And if you've got that mindset, nothing's going to give you a kick in the ass, you know? Nothing's going to come up and say, right, I never expected that. At least if you have that kind of wide range of possible scenarios, your sensitivity analysis is done from a numbers perspective in conjunction with that. And you say, right, instead of needing X amount of money, I need X by 4 to fund the business. Because two things could happen. One thing is, it could not take off as quickly as you expect, or it could take off much faster than you expect. And you need to think about all of those eventualities to make yourself ready.
Yep. Have you heard of the rule of 4x2?
No, tell me.
When I was living in London 12 so years ago, I saw a VC speaking about, you know, he gets pitched a lot. Entrepreneurs want his money to grow their business or their idea. And he has this rule of 4x2 where he says it's either going to take 4 times as long and cost twice as much, or take twice as long and cost 4 times as much. The only difference is you get to choose which path.
That's a good way to put it in, actually. Yeah,
it is.
And it very much is, yeah, because that's that kind of whole planning aspect. So if I had to take longer time and suffer the impatience factor, because every entrepreneur wants to get their product or service out as quickly as possible, but take a breath, you know, plan it out and have your alternatives in place. So back to the story again, if it does go sideways, you've got your safety nets in place.
Yeah. Back on what you said, communication before, it's one of my sayings, communication is the key to any relationship. I think that's so important. Yeah. I kind of derailed your answer here. I think I'll ask it again. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Putting the pieces in faster than I would like to, having to actually grow. You need people, it's fundamental. You can't grow a business without people. Getting the right people, not shortchanging the business by making the wrong decisions on people. And that's the painful part for the founding entrepreneur, because we're 27 or 24/7 on. And at least when you're ramping that fast, at least 6 hours of that day is planning, finding gaps, looking at filling gaps, looking at finding the right people. You're on the phone a lot. You're on, emails are pinging in at the hundreds, and all that stuff it's painful, but it's worth it.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
The excitement, the buzz, the adrenaline factor. It's fun. People say, "Are you fucking crazy?" It's fun. Just gone from this to that. How can that have been fun? I don't think you took a break in a year. The fact is, I think I've read many sayings going right back to the philosophers. If you're happy at what you're doing, you don't work a day of your life. Just enjoy what you're doing, and if that's a buzz, then bring other people, like-minded people, acting in unison is unparalleled force. You can get a lot of shit done by having the right people around the table with the right attitude. And you, as an entrepreneur, as a founding entrepreneur, which is what I've done mostly, my job is to give them feedback on what they're doing, give them credit, and give them guidance. The guidance factor is crucially important from a leader perspective. And I talk a lot about my post, but I'm just also going to say that a post that I did was, if you can lift the load with others, so like, you got to roll the sleeves up, and you got to be able to do the heavy lifting as well. Because people, people admire that, but they also get the feeling that we're all in the same ship. I don't care whether my business card will say founder and CEO, but I can be down the production floor with my sleeves rolled up and t-shirt and shorts on, getting stuck in. It just needs to be done.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Probably realizing the potential and recognizing the capacity. So you realize the potential of the business fairly early, but you got to recognize your capacity as well. And there's a third element as well. Don't put it out there, and don't present it, and don't put it in front of your wide audience until you're sure. Because you can be damn sure that your competitors as well as your customers. So if you put something out prematurely, a product out in the market, and if you're not geared up, funded up, and structured to maximize the benefit of that, pieces of it are going to be taken, or the whole thing could be taken. Now, luckily, I worked around intellectual property for a number of years. I mentioned that I was working as a product manager way back, and in my first step in the career. And that IP part, intellectual property and patents and trademarks and all of the intellectual property parts, I know very well. That's added value to all of the businesses, and it's adding more value right now because Icon Global Innovations is about developing ideas. It's about developing ideas into products that are licensable or saleable technologies. So knowing all of that is critically important. And but definitely, it's recognizing the capacity, realizing the potential, and then matching the pieces to make sure that it works.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Personality. Yeah. They've got to have personality. you can't sell anything unless people believe in you and trust you and are willing to give you their time, attention, and money, because business is business. But your personality is crucially important. You cannot be looking at your shoes. You can't be looking down. You need to be looking straight at them, and you need to say, I'm going to do this, and only commit to and promise what you can do. Don't overpromise. It's actually better to underpromise and oversupply.
Yep.
And if you do that, you're going to have trust right throughout. And thankfully, the customers that I had 10, 15 years ago are still my customers now. And is there, but that took a bit of honing at the beginning. That's not to say that I didn't, that I blotted my copybook, or I made, that I left them down. But I just had to learn as I went. And I just said, maybe I stayed in, one gear before I jumped into the next gear and the gear after, just at certain speeds. You just got to go at the speed that is comfortable and reliable.
Yep.
You do not want to overpromise and undersupply, because you won't get a second chance.
No, exactly. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And I certainly fucked that up early on, said yes to too many things and spread myself too thin, and, didn't do what I said I was going to do. And that took me, 5 or 6 years to learn, and very powerful once you get it. I'm still in awe at some professionals, accountants, lawyers. They got tardy, response times, and they just take on too much. And you just look at them and say, if you can't get back to me when you said you would, then, how are you handling these intricate details of my business affairs? How do I have any confidence in you if you can't even fucking get back to me when you said you would,
Absolutely. And I think also, you can use that kind of aligned argument. If I told my customer today that I'm going to get back to them by Friday, and if I didn't get back by Friday, I'd probably lose my sale. Or at least you make a hole in the boat. You're going to be struggling to stay afloat after that. But I think promise what you can give, and I understand the human factor as well, Troy, because when I started out, I had that kind of like enthusiasm, exuberance factor, and I would say, shit, I can't turn this down. I got to take this opportunity. And it's a human condition that we are, entrepreneurs particularly, we're born optimistic. We're glass half full people, and we think that we can do it. But life has a different kind of like life inputs or other factors or other inputs into your kind of making it happen. May not go to plan. And again, you mentioned it as well about communication, and I agree. Being able to communicate, if maybe to meet your commitments, communicate as early as possible. Say, look, because I didn't get this delivery of material or whatever it is on Tuesday, I'm going to have to kick this out by a week.
Yep.
So here's the reason. If you want proof, I'll give it to you. Just be very clear about that.
Yep. Want to become the best manager you can be? Check out our Kick-Ass Manager course at growasmallbusiness.com. Do the course and add your fellow managers for no extra cost. Join the 30%. 70% of people quit their job because of their manager. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, I think like I said, the people factor for me is crucial. And when I choose people that are, everybody in a business is important, right? Everybody has a role to play. So when I choose people for a startup, particularly, or when I was scaling up, we'd go through the HR process, a couple of interviews and, look at the resumes and so on. But then if I felt comfortable enough for, I guess, particularly kind of medium, it doesn't matter who you're hiring. At a startup stage, everybody's equal.
Yep.
So I would say that would have been like hiring from a technical perspective. I'm going to go for a coffee with this person, or I'm going to meet this person Friday evening for a beer, because I want to be able to understand who the person is, not what's on their curriculum vitae or their resume. I want to be able to see and understand and get a kind of like, get that kind of like comfort factor. And I think in those meetings or in those chats, I've probably got more information than I ever would if I was sitting across an interview table.
Well, absolutely. And it's not necessarily going with your gut, I don't think, because only 7% of communication is the actual words we use. The other 93% are, what's 38%, I think, the way we talk. And then the last 40 or 55%, sorry, is your body language. So as I encourage people, the more time you spend with someone, whether, if you're interviewing them, whether that's a team member or a business partner or shareholder, the more time you spend around them, the more cues you're going to get to see if this guy or girl or person is a good fit for the whatever role it is.
I completely agree as well, because they're going to be working for your company. You want them to fit well from their perspective, so you want them to be happy in their role. And if you can fish out or filter out the people that may not fit your business, you're doing them a favor as well as your business. So, that's the key. But it's about connecting the dots in that sense and just knowing, will this person fit our team? Will they gel in with the other team members? Are they going to hang around for the long haul if we need them to stay? I don't want to be hiring people every 3 months. That's also a factor. And I think all that stability that you can inject as, let's say, the founder, CEO, leader of the business, benefits the whole team. And so that's the kind of people and hiring aspect.
What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Definitely team building every now and then, which is like a night, that can be a meal together, that can be go for a few beers, that can be like, have some social time where people understand each other outside of the work environment. But at the same time, let everybody understand where you're going. What's your roadmap? What's your vision for the business? How are we doing this? Why are we doing this? First of all, why are we doing this? What's our product? Is it going to be beneficial to people generally? Is it going to be beneficial to our target market? Are people going to get that benefit and see it? And if so, then why are you coming to work? What do you want to achieve? If you have a group of people in a startup stage, you can have like 10 people in a startup and give them a piece of the pie, give them shares, give them share options. Make it worth their while to put in that extra effort, and make it feel like kind of like a team, like an actual. I guess the greatest analogy that I can give is like where you're actually all after the same goal, and the founder of the business is either the trainer or the captain or both, where you just point, where you're saying, we got to win the league, we got to do this. And that attitude kind of keeps people pointed in the right direction, and you got to keep that message rolling. You can't be just, here's our plan, here's a policy, this is our target for a year, I'll see you in 11 months.
Yeah,
that can't happen.
No.
So it has to be very clear, and you got to be one of the team as well. That's the part that I love. I remember when we were building a factory to make products. I would walk around for, I'd say I'm going for a 10-minute walk. That would take 2 hours, because I would sit down and go, how's your family? How's life? What's happening? And you have multiple chats and conversations, but you get to know the people and they get to know you and they feel comfortable. And when we won, the kind of output approach was, we won a national contract. We were ranked, and we won a national contract, and we had like 7 weeks before Christmas to get this thing done. And that was like impossible based on the resources that we had. So I called the whole team together, and they knew me personally directly at this stage. And I said, guys, we got to get this done. Tell your families, is there anyone here that doesn't want to do this? Raise your hand, or talk to me afterwards directly. And everybody was on board. We got the contract done. People were working like 16 hours a day, 12 hours a day. They were adding hours whenever they could. And it was admirable in the sense that you could see the level of effort that people put in, purely because of, I guess, we were a startup. So there was a great buzz around the place. There was great excitement. There was great kind of energy. B, I knew every single one of them directly and personally. So, and I had built that over a year, let's say, most of a year. Everyone was on the same ship. Yep. We were all pointing in the same direction.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
That's a really difficult one to answer, because for many years, balance was really, really, it seemed like it was never going to come, and days become weeks and weeks become months and months become years before you know it. And, but I do think now, I really only took the foot off the gas probably around 4 years ago. And for that 15, 16-year period, I was just full tilt. I was always on. I was always going. I would get calls at 4 o'clock in the morning because we were working around the world. We had various time zones. And I found in the last 4 years that unless you get a degree of balance where you have fun in life as well, where you enjoy yourself, your whole functioning, mentally and physically, does not reach its maximum. Balance is a problem. You need to watch it. Stress is also a factor, because like, I'm lucky enough in the sense that I seem to just thrive on stress or enjoy the excitement factor. But in the book that I wrote, the first line in the last chapter is, manage stress or it will manage you, because if you can't manage the stress levels, or if you're not in a situation, or if you're not that type to manage like pretty heavy and sometimes sudden stress, you need people around you that can. And getting back to the balance factor, insofar and where you can, take time off. And I mean take time off. Don't take the laptop. Try not to take the phone. Chill.
Oh, it's amazing. You come back with so much more energy and clarity. And it's something you said earlier on about that old adage of find a job you love, never work a day in your life. There's a dark side of the coin when you are a business owner, because if you love what you do, you can have this compulsion to always want to work, which is, something
Absolutely.
I've got a chocolate Labrador to help keep me, away from the laptop. We go bushwalking. And obviously my almost 9-year-old daughter as well. So it can be, challenging, really enjoying what you do.
Totally. And you can relate. So when you do come back and having taken a break, it's like clearing the hard drive, you just you have a lot more space, and you see things that you probably otherwise wouldn't have seen, because you're constantly like being hit with stuff. So I get what you're saying. Just take a break, get out, go for a walk, go for a hike, come back, whatever you like to do. Game of golf, go for a few drinks with your friends, whatever it is, I like to think, I said something when somebody asked me a question in another podcast. They said, like, what do you think about discipline? What do you think? And I said, discipline is necessary unless it's 5 o'clock on Friday evening.
That's good. I like that.
You need to go out and let off steam, because that you just come back with a smile on your face, and you just come back in on whenever you start again, which is probably going to be sometime on Saturday or maybe Sunday evening at the latest. You're just going to have that recharge factor, and your mind is clearer.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
I kind of did it by experience. I remember when I started the medical product business, I got into an incubator for a while, and I knew that I was close to launching the product, but the incubator was like maybe a 12-month gig. And I was 3 months in, and I said, this product is ready to go. So I got to get out and sell it, and there was this like conference going on for 4 hours. And the whole idea was professional development, that I would listen to the president and the PowerPoint for 4 hours about sales. So I was an hour in, and I was getting a little bit agitated, because I said, shit, I got to get this sale, because I had a customer lined up. And I said, I have a meeting. This is like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, I got to be at that meeting at 2 o'clock. So I went out, and I just got up, and I said, excuse me. There was like 8 people in the incubator or something like that. Excuse me. I said, I have to apologize. I've just got an urgent meeting that I have to go to. And the guy was looking at me going like, what the hell's going on here? You're supposed to be in this it was kind of, I won't say a school environment, but it was like a training session.
Yep.
So I went out, I came back maybe 3 hours later, and the program manager met me at the door, and she wasn't happy. And she said, like, you've just left this whole training session, which is supposed to be a benefit to you, and I got yang, like I was told, like, I was on the verge of being kicked out of the program. So out of my pocket, I pulled out this purchase order, which was probably grand.
Sorry,
and I said,
sorry, say that again. How much was it?
That was about 40 grand, 40.
Yeah.
So I said, this is what I got in the last hour. I said, no disrespect to training or personal development, but for me, I was out selling. So I was getting results, and I got the result. And she said, that's probably the saving grace. That's probably the saving factor that keeps you in the program. I'm not saying that we should do things in a kind of a maverick style way, but like professional development for me, unless it's crucially important to what you're doing and can be compressed down into reasonable timeframes, you just got to be careful of the opportunity cost.
Yeah.
If you're getting 4, 6, 8 hours of training that I believe in many cases, I'm going to say this straight, could be compressed down to 1 hour.
Yeah.
Fuck, bring it down to 1 hour.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Yeah. People that have that entrepreneurial. Oh, let me try to say this now again. Entrepreneur culture or intrapreneur culture, which is somebody that's inside a business that is an entrepreneur within a large business. I remember having a managing director at one stage, and his approach was very much kind of I was influenced by his approach, because he would walk around and he would shake hands with like 40, 50, 60 people in the morning, say, welcome to work. Great to have you here. Let's go with this. Let's do what we have to do. We got to hit a new target. And that kind of enthusiasm and his presence on the ground gave me that, I guess, the spin-off of that for me was like real experience where people were motivated to achieve a goal. Purely by being on the ground, being involved, having that knowledge of people, having that connection with people. And it's probably coming across a lot. I hope I'm very much a people person, whether it's on a social level or I like to talk all day. That might be the Irish gene factor as well. That we like to yap a lot. We like to talk a lot. But I think realistically, if you've got a good connection with people, you can get an awful lot more done.
You have a board of directors or advisors?
Yeah, I did. Most of the time, that was a happy place. Sometimes you have to, there's disagreements, and the trick is to recognize them as disagreements for the benefit of the business. Nobody's trying to have get no one-upment, kind of like no advantage factor. They're not trying to take advantage. They're just saying, look, this is good for the business. And I also think it's good for the entrepreneur to have some kind of counterbalance in terms of decision making.
Yes.
That you have somebody that has a bit of mileage, bit of experience. Thankfully, I'm in the kind of like mentor advisor zone now, so I understand how to manage that. Being the warm the founder hat, but now wearing the mentor and advisor hat as well, I see the advantage of that. And I think people need to take it at face value. They need to say, look, that person at face value at least is trying to do this for the benefit of the business, and everybody wins. If it's an alternative, if they're not trying to do it for the benefit of the business, they shouldn't be around that table.
Yeah,
if they're trying to do it for personal advantage, then there's no point in having them there.
Or just ego. I mean, that's really disruptive and value destroying. If you've got someone that's just a bit of an asshole or just disagreeable person that makes it personal, like you said, it's about attacking the issue, so attacking the ball, not the man. The way I describe boards to people is it's a bunch of intellectual piranhas. You put an issue on the table, they rip it apart, and then make a decision and move on. You don't attack the people involved. You say, right, here's the situation. What are we going to do?
100%. And you need to make sure it's not Machiavellian as well, that you get the business. They're not trying to get the 51% and 6 months later you're fired. So you just got to be careful with that aspect of things. That's quite rare though. But you're right about the ego factor, and finding the right people, adding value in your space, or knowing somebody that knows your sector well, the non-financial aspect of them having a great network is hugely important, because that could accelerate your growth.
Yeah.
So finding the right people is crucial. Get somebody that has an open mind, though. You know, entrepreneurs are pretty much, you know, we're fairly single-minded and focused and driven, you know. Yep. So we're hard to manage in that sense. So you need to get somebody that has an open mind and understand the entrepreneur mentality, as well as understand where the business could go and should go. No, that's, you know, finding the right people is finding the right person for that is difficult.
Yes.
So I would say going filtering and vetting exercise that I had with employees, use the same. Just make sure you get on with the person and that they have the necessary skills and that you've validated or kind of vetted that completely.
Now, you're one of the few we've had on that's exited a business. Do you have any advice for the audience that considering exiting?
Yeah, know the value of your business. Don't jump ship too early. Don't look at the first check offer. Take your time. You know, if they're making an offer, it's probably worth more than what they're initially offering.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say, yeah, don't say no, but say, let me think about that. And take some time to understand your value. If your business is of significant value, get somebody that you trust from an accounting or corporate finance perspective to give you an independent valuation.
Yes.
Don't pay them a big check. That's the key factor. If you want to say to them, look, if you trust them, and if you know them, a lot of entrepreneurs will know people who they trust within that corporate finance space. Ask them to give you their opinion, first of all. If you want to go into the kind of granular breakdown detail so that you have a valuation report that you can take to the would-be acquirer, then agree a deal that is maybe results-based, you know. So instead of paying them a check for 10 or 20 grand, say, look, I'll give you X fraction of a percentage of what, depending on the valuation, but they'll get a success fee if it closes properly. Everybody's invested at that stage.
All right, Patrick, one of our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Matching your technology with the right markets and biting off what you can chew at the beginning. Being good at one segment, but having other segments in mind. So if you try to boil the ocean, you're not going to be able to do it. So do it step by step. Find a market, validate it, make sure that there's a saying, there's a fairly common saying as well, is there a gap in the market? But you need to make sure there's a market in the gap.
Yes.
You know, because if you're in a space that has no market in that gap, then you're burning fuel, you're burning money, you're burning energy, and you're spinning wheels. You're just not getting anywhere. So I think make sure, pick the gap in the market, validate the market in the gap, and ultimately validate it by getting sales. Because until you get sales, that's the ultimate validation.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Wow, Steve Jobs. I think he was visionary. He had a great way of making things look and sound simple, even though they were quite complicated. But he was able to. He had that visionary aspect, and I think as entrepreneurs, as inventors, as innovators, we got to keep that vision. It's not just saying what we have, the status quo that we've got today. World need in 5 years' time. What will the world need in 10 years' time? And things are compressing so quickly now. We need to be saying, what will the world need in a year from now?
Yeah.
So I think the visionary aspect and the Steve Jobs book was probably my favorite.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
When I'm doing long drives, I try to listen to as much as possible. And I read a lot now. I use Audible and like audiobooks. I'm not the guy who's going to sit down for like 2 days and read a book. I will listen. I'll be doing something else. I'll be going somewhere. I'll be either traveling, or even if I'm taking a break and driving from A to B, I'll say, well, I don't want to sit here and drive for 4 hours. I'm going to listen to something. So utilizing your time and listen to and read as much as possible. Reading gives you a wide breadth of knowledge, and you also get to see and hear other people's viewpoint.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Wow. My favorite tool is speaking to people, doing your market research with conversations. Go to speak with the people that are using your product service every day and ask them the questions. Sometimes you'll get line by line answers. Sometimes you've got to read between the lines. So that's my favorite tool. It's called, I guess, market research, but it's really about like listening, understanding, listen a lot, ask the question and listen. And sometimes you get a nugget, and that could be critical to your direction or could be critical to founding a startup.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out, 14 years old on the beach selling burgers and chips?
Oh shit, do I have to do this? that would have been because it was heavy duty in the sense that, you're in a kind of like heated environment, literally. But the first thing was, can I make this happen? The first question is, can I do this? And it's a self-test aspect, you kind of go, if I can do this, I can do bigger things, just step one. So I would say the question is it worth doing it? And can I do it? Yeah. And keep, without being unrealistic on the answers, stay positive. Positivity is a key tool. Stay positive.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks very much for your time today, Patrick. I think the audience got a shit ton of value out of what you've shared with us. A really interesting journey since 1997 when you started the online search business for cars, growing up to 50 team members with the medical mattress business in a year. That's phenomenal growth. So I really appreciate your time. And, I hope you can get down to Hobart here, visit us in Tasmania. There's 4 or 5 craft breweries within a kilometre or 2 of my house, so well within walking distance.
That's a great incentive for me. I've enjoyed the conversation today, Troy. Excellent stuff. You're doing a great job there, and hopefully in the coming months or next year or so, I'll swing by your way and we'll have a couple of craft beers.
That'd be great.
Cheers, mate.
And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.